I can't count the number of times I've turned a cocktail hour into a dance party, totally by accident. One thing I like to think I'm really good at is making people happy. I may not be the best violinist or dancer or business person, but I live to watch guests light up during my performance. Every tedious minute of editing tracks, every long weekend of travel, every equipment challenge is forgotten when guests start singing and dancing along with me. I intentionally craft my set lists to create an experience that draws people in and makes them feel good. And that's what I'm going to teach you to do today. I hope you have plenty of business cards to give out because if you follow these steps, they're going to start disappearing during your gigs, I promise. Are you a classically trained violinist dreaming of stepping out of the orchestra and into the spotlight? But maybe the world of solo gigs feels intimidating? You're not alone. Welcome to The Glam Violinist, the podcast that empowers classically trained musicians to build thriving careers as sought-after entertainers. I'm your host, Celeste V, and each week we'll break down the secrets to getting the gigs you've been dreaming of. Get ready to unleash your inner rock star and turn your passion into a paycheck. Let's get glamorous. My voice is a little scratchy today. I apologize. I spent the weekend out in my new house demoing walls, ripping out floors and tiles, and I've got so much dust in my throat that it's just kind of thrown me for a loop, but I had to get this podcast recorded, so bear with me. Today's episode is all about building a set list, how to choose songs, and source your backing tracks. For the purpose of this episode, let me be clear, I'm referring to background music during an event where guests aren't there to see you. It's not a concert. You're the background entertainment. You're basically adding to the ambiance. Most likely, it's a party or a celebration or some kind of social gathering, so people want to feel good and they want to be happy. Your role is to create a soundscape that contributes to the overall vibe and funness of the event. That is a word, I looked it up. Let's start by talking about choosing songs. So depending on what types of events you want to do, you're going to choose different types of songs. If you mostly want to do wedding ceremonies, you're going to focus a lot more on ballads. If you're going to do cocktail hours or receptions or corporate events, honestly, those are very similar for set list purposes. So think about what types of events you want to do as you're crafting your set list. Choosing your songs is very much a part of your branding. We're going to talk about branding more in a later episode, but it's basically a part of who you are as a performer. It's something that makes you unique, something that makes you different, something that makes you stand apart from the other violinists that are out in the world. So you're going to attract different clients depending on the songs that you feature, especially in your marketing. You may have a variety on, say, your Instagram page, but whatever songs you choose to put in your demos, for example, that's what people are going to assume that you do. So you want to be real picky about that. Every violinist has their own personality and their own styles of music that they gravitate toward, and so your set list is going to look different from anybody else's set list. It also depends on your background. It depends on what you already know. I personally came from playing for 25 years in corporate bands and cover bands, wedding bands, and so I have a very unique kind of background as far as songs that I know and that I have seen at events. Other people that I talk to are more in tune with what's trending on TikTok or what's really the big hits of today. You need to have a little bit of both. You need to know some of the classics and you need to know what's trending. You kind of have to keep a pulse on the music that's going on around you and what people like. Because remember, this isn't about playing for yourself. This is about entertaining people. So you're going to want to research a little bit. No matter what you already know, I guarantee you, you don't know all the songs that all of your guests are going to enjoy. So you're going to have to dig in, do a little research of all-time favorites, do some research of sing-alongs, Google what songs are most requested from DJs, anything like that to help you get a sense of some of those maybe older classic songs if you're a younger person, or vice versa. Maybe you need to spend a little bit more time just keeping yourself in the loop with what's going on in today's music. As a general rule, you want to have a little bit of something for everyone. As I said, there's no way that everybody's going to like the same music that you do, so you want to try to learn different songs in various styles, even if they're not your favorite style. You want to have at least a little bit of everything, and then you can start to hone it in on what is really your specialty or what you do the most of, but you still want to have a lot of variety for these types of events. Now, don't forget, there's going to be different age groups and different decades of music. One trick I learned many years ago is that in general, people consider, quote unquote, their music to be the music they listened to in high school. There's a little give and take there, maybe junior high, maybe college a little bit, but those 4 years of high school are really, really formative to what somebody considers their music, the music they gravitate toward, the music that makes them feel good and feel included. So my goal is to always make every single guest feel happy and included, and that means that I try to include music from lots of different decades so I can hit that sweet spot, that 4-year high school sweet spot for as many guests as possible in the room during the course of the night. So even if it's just for 2 minutes, every single person is going to have their song or their genre played at some point if I have an hour-long set. That's always my goal. Now, once you have a list of songs to work with, it's time to focus on the art form that is building a set list. Tip number 1, keep it upbeat. Unless you're performing for the prelude set before a wedding ceremony, upbeat music is going to make people feel good. Studies have shown that up-tempo music triggers the release of dopamine in our brains. That's the hormone that causes that feeling of happiness and well-being. And here's the really interesting part. That dopamine is released not just during the best part of the song, but it's also released during the lead up to that big part, the anticipation. That's why you get that incredible feeling right at the drop during like a great EDM song, or a lot of pop songs have it also. It's also what gets everybody throwing their hands in the air and, singing along at the top of their lungs when the chorus hits. They're like, oh, here it comes. And then boom, there's the chorus and everybody knows it. They start singing along. That's that dopamine hit that they're all getting. And you're creating that by choosing songs that are more upbeat and have a good, strong bass line or drum line. I know ballads are so luxurious, and yes, that is honestly where a lot of people's minds go when they think of the violin, but that doesn't mean it's actually what they want to hear. Let me say that again. Just because you can make people weep with your stirring rendition of My Heart Will Go On does not mean that that's what the majority of guests want to hear at a party. Keep it upbeat, or at least consider more up-tempo remixes of your super slow favorites. Maybe a version that has drums or some kind of strong beat added to it. Also, when you're building your set list, think of the event flow. This is something I learned playing in cover bands. Every event has a natural progression that kind of goes from guests are arriving, they're mingling. This is where you play the more easygoing, not necessarily ballads. You don't want them to walk in and be like, oh, I'm going to fall asleep before the event has even started. But more like classics, maybe the Frank Sinatra. If you like to play jazz, throw a few of those in there at the beginning. And then as the night goes on, you're going to kind of segue from the lighter music into more upbeat music during different climaxes throughout the course of the event into a dance set at the end of the night where it is just balls to the wall, as I like to say. So think about that even in the course of a cocktail hour set list. Maybe it's only an hour long out of a 5-hour event, but you still want it to have some kind of an ebb and flow or a build depending on what's happening before and after your set. So take that into consideration. When you're creating your set list, you want to try to group similar songs together. And when I say group, they can be similar in lots of different ways. What you don't want is for guests to feel like they're on a roller coaster, where you go from a jazz slow song to an upbeat hip hop song to a country crooner song to a pop Dua Lipa song. Like, you don't want to be just all over the place back to back. Maybe you group things by genre, or you group them by feel. You can have different genres that still have a similar feel, but just keep that in mind. You don't want too much variety back to back. Also, you want to always add more songs to your set list than you're going to need for the length of time that you're playing, because you never know what the crowd is going to respond to. So the better you get at this, the easier it'll be to not even have to create a set list, essentially, just kind of pull from what songs and have just kind of an overall collection. But when you're first getting started, especially, you're going to want to have a set list, but just make sure that it's longer than what you need so that you can watch and say, oh, okay, these guests are really responding to this kind of music. And maybe that gives you the option to say, I don't think I'm going to include this one because I don't think it's going to go over well with this particular crowd. So you can erase that one or skip that one and have something else to replace it. That's just a good rule of thumb. You always want to have more than you're going to need, and try to avoid dead air. You don't want dead air during a party. That kills the vibe completely. One way that I avoid dead air is by creating medleys. I love medleys. They make it so that you can kind of have a DJ vibe without having to live DJ. I typically group songs together based on either genre or key signature or beats per minute or some combination of that. So you want to have songs, again, that have some kind of similarity so there's a nice flow. If you ever hear two songs and you think, oh my gosh, this song sounds just like that song, those two songs would go really well together in a medley. Or maybe you realize as you're going through your song list that these two songs are the same beats per minute and they're the same key signature. Voila, you've got two songs for a medley already back to back. Maybe you have to be a little bit more creative than that, but creating medleys is a great way to not have to, on the spot, think about, okay, what song is going to go really well after this, or to have to create an entire set list from scratch every single time. You also want to shorten your songs. Think about this. DJs have been doing this for years. How often do you sit through a DJ set and hear the entire 4-minute song of anything? It's pretty rare. As I mentioned in my last podcast, I have a 1, 2, 3 minute rule. The first minute, people go, aha, I love this song. The second minute, they're like, yeah, here comes the chorus again. They get that dopamine rush, right? The third minute, they've tuned out at that point, and that's fine sometimes. You can have background music where it's just background music, but I'm always trying to have more of those aha moments and create more of those, oh, I love that song moments. So I tend to shorten songs to 2 minutes or less. So to create these medleys, there are a couple of different software programs that I recommend. Audacity is great for either PC or for Mac. I've been using Audacity for almost 20 years, and it is super, super effective. It's very robust. It can do a lot, but it's pretty user-friendly. I honestly don't even know anything else because it's just what I've used for so long. I have played around with GarageBand, and that's the other option if you have a Mac. It only works on Macs, and GarageBand comes on most Mac laptops and desktops. But Audacity works on either one, and you can download it and learn to play with it, and you can be editing same day. It doesn't have a super steep learning curve, but I promise you it's worth it. You want to be able to do editing on your own songs. Now, before we get into purchasing backing tracks, we need to talk a little bit about performance styles. There are different scenarios and different vibes, and for each one of those, there's various types of backing tracks. There are 3 different versions of tracks that I typically perform with. One is acoustic tracks. That could be an acoustic cover, like a piano cover of a song, or it could be specifically a piano backing track or a guitar backing track, or it might be a guitar cover. Those all work really well if you want acoustic versions. Then there's traditional instrumental karaoke tracks. That's the kind you hear when you go to karaoke. It's got all the instruments in it, sounds just like the original or pretty close, but without the vocals. And then you can also perform with the original recording. And I mean the original MP3, the same one you hear on Spotify, with vocals. Performing that way is becoming more and more acceptable. Remixes are sort of a subcategory of all 3 of those. Remixes can be with or without vocals, but they are a different take on a song. It can be a remake of a song with a different artist who performed it and made it popular again, or it can be a DJ remix. It can be an instrumental remix where it's just got a different beat or a different feel to it. A lot of times remixes are more upbeat and a little bit more interesting, and they can be better for events because, again, they have kind of a vibe to them that maybe the original song didn't have. So remixes are a great way to distinguish yourself and make it feel a little bit more like your version of that song. There is a huge trend toward this hybrid fusion style DJ and live instrument combination where you get the best of both worlds. You have a DJ performing the songs, those short little snippets, but you also have a saxophone player or electric violinist or even a whole band that is playing along with the DJ. You can create this same exact scenario on your own during cocktail hour or whenever by performing with the vocals, not an instrumental cover, but just playing along with the singer who originally performed the song. That can be made into a medley. So your medleys can be all instrumental or they can be with vocals. I would pick one or the other. I wouldn't have a medley that has both, but I often make multiple versions of my medleys. One version that doesn't have the vocals, but I also have the version with the vocals. Makes it easier for people to sing along, makes it easier for them to recognize, and you can put your violin over on top. So it really sounds like it's still a violin version of the song. It just happens to have the vocals underneath. Whether you're performing DJ style with original MP3s or with an instrumental backing track, the key is finding or creating the highest quality track possible. Sourcing backing tracks can be really tricky. There are so many different ways to purchase or download those songs or backing tracks that you're going to use during your performance. And everybody has a different system. I've talked to so many different violinists and everybody has their own way. A lot of people will build a playlist on Spotify or on YouTube and just stream it during their performance. But I personally never perform with streaming tracks. I just have had too many events where I can't rely on my cell signal or my Wi-Fi. I don't want to have to ask the planner or the client or the venue for their Wi-Fi. Sometimes they're very hesitant or will outright say no. So I don't rely on streaming. I always perform with downloaded songs. And I don't just mean downloaded on the app, but like downloaded as an MP3, stored on my laptop in a folder. That's where it's pulling from. It's pulling from my hard drive. Usually my songs are edited anyway, so I don't really perform with the original full-length version of a song very often. Now, there are different places where you can get tracks. Number one, you can create it yourself or you can pay somebody else to create it for you. By far the most time-consuming option and the most expensive, but it's also a possibility. You can go to Upwork or Fiverr and find some really talented music producers who will produce a track essentially. The best version, if you're going to buy tracks, is karaoke version. Their custom backing tracks cost $2.99, but they allow you to change the key and you can also control the volume of each instrument individually, or you can remove that instrument altogether. This is especially great if the song already has violin on it. That's one thing you don't want to do is play along with another violin. It doesn't usually work well, unless there's a lot of them and it's really mixed in. But just like a solo violin like Rather Be by Clean Bandit, or a great country song that has a great fiddle solo on it. You don't want to play on top of those violin parts. So this is where custom backing tracks from karaoke version come in really handy. You can remove that violin altogether, or you can adjust the volume. Like I said, you can also change the key. It's just a fantastic version. Once you purchase that track, what I love about it is you can go back at any time and readjust it. Maybe you decided to keep the backing vocals in there at 40%. You decided you don't want those backing vocals there. You can take them out. Maybe the keyboard part was too loud. You can take it out and re-download it without having to pay for it again. You can go back and adjust it as many times as you need to once you buy it. You can also purchase and download a karaoke track from something like iTunes Store or Amazon Music, something like that. Now, you can't on Spotify, but there are other websites out there that sell MP3s that you can purchase, download, and store on your hard drive. There are lots of websites that sell backing tracks also. One that I use all the time for my Indian events is Hindi Karaoke Shop. They have almost every super mega hit of Bollywood song that you can imagine in a karaoke version. And those are more expensive, but it's really worth it for me instead of trying to rip the vocals out myself. The other way you can go is with a vocal ripper. There are lots of both paid and free options online where you can upload the song that you're trying to rip the vocals out of, take them out, do minor adjustments. That software and that technology is getting so much better than it used to be. So that's definitely an option if you want to play around with that. As a last resort, you can always use an online tool or download an app like iTunes Go or something like that where you can download songs from YouTube without losing any sound quality. It's not the best option, but in a worst case scenario, when a bride really wants a particular song to walk down the aisle and you cannot find a karaoke track for it, that does work. I have been known, I have to say, to spend hours scouring the internet to find just the right track or remix version of a certain song. It can be very time consuming to find some of these, especially if they're older songs or not as popular. Sometimes it's super easy and sometimes they're just incredibly difficult to find, but I promise you it's worth it to find the right version. You're probably wondering about the legalities and licensing and all of that, and believe me, I have too. I have researched the heck out of this and asked so many different people in the industry about it. I am not claiming to have all the answers, but I can't personally find any required individual license that would apply to me or to my gigs as a solo performer for private events. Now remember that sourcing the tracks doesn't mean your job is done. You're going to want to get really down and dirty with that track. Get to know it intimately. If you're using an instrumental version, you're going to want to make sure that the form is exactly the same as the original that you're used to. And if you're using sheet music, you're going to need to make sure that the MP3 and the sheet music match up. And if they don't, you're going to have to do some editing in one place or the other. And check if there's a fade out at the end. That's so awkward. Is the original song in the key of F sharp major? You might want to change that to G. Is it 5 minutes long? Definitely want to shorten that. Is this song something that you're going to be performing over and over at your gigs? You might want to consider adding that to a medley instead of keeping it as a standalone with an awkward pause before and after. Now, only after you know every second of that backing track, as if it's your own composition, will you be totally confident performing with it live. And that's the last hurdle. What software are you going to use to play your tracks during your performances? Again, there are so many different ways, so many different options. First of all, you want to make sure that you store those tracks on your computer hard drive in a way that is organized and makes sense to you, so you can find them when you need them. Drag and drop them into the software that you're using, but you want to keep them all in one place. Then you have to choose the software that you're actually going to use. I personally used iTunes for 15 years almost, until it became Apple Music and they started offering streaming services. I just prefer to keep my streaming music for my own entertainment separate from my live performance MP3s, like very separate. I actually had to stop using Apple Music for my live performances after I lost thousands of songs in my 20-year-old library. It was tragic. I eventually switched to using DJ software because it offers the features that I was looking for a live performance. There are a couple of different ones that I would recommend if you don't already have something that you're using. There's a free version of DJ Pro by Algorithm that is perfect if you have a Mac. I also like Rekordbox by Pioneer DJ. That one works on both Mac and PC. There are many others out there, but those are two that I've used, and I know they work really well, and they're user-friendly. Most laptops also come with a built-in default MP3 player. You can use that. You can use something else. As long as you can build and save a playlist using songs that are stored on your hard drive, you're good to go. As you can see, performing live with tracks is sort of an art form in itself. It's not the same as a string quartet gig. It's not the same as a live DJ set, although there definitely are similarities. It's definitely not the same as a bar gig or a singer-songwriter set where there's a lot of talking and storytelling between each song. You're aiming for a super polished and seamless flow that keeps the energy up and keeps guests smiling. So what are the key takeaways from today? For your set list in general, you want to keep it more upbeat. You want to add a lot of variety and you want to shorten your songs. Creating medleys is a great way to do that. Next, you're going to go and purchase and edit your backing tracks. and then choose the software that you're going to use to actually play those tracks during your performance. That's it in a nutshell. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. Please follow me on Instagram at the Celeste V. That's the Celeste VEE. Send me a DM if you have any questions, topics that you want to hear more about on future episodes of The Glam Violinist. Again, I have so many ideas, but I'm really curious about what you want to know, and I promise you won't be the only person with that same question. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, will you please share it with other musicians who you think might be interested in gigging and performing? Thank you so much for tuning in to the second episode of The Glam Violinist. I'm so excited that you're here, and I cannot wait to watch you grow, no matter where you are on this journey. We are in this together, and I believe in you. Until next time, this is Celeste V, reminding you to stay glamorous.